you've ever wondered why the price of a loaf of bread a couple years ago and now are not the same, it is probably due to inflation. So now the question comes, what is inflation? Inflation in simple terms is the rise in the price of daily goods and services, such as clothing, food, and transport. Inflation rate is the increase in percentages. For example, if the inflation rate is 3%, then buying a $5 notebook will now be $5.15. Can you believe a dollar in the 1950s had the same buying power as $10.23 in 2017? Inflation tends to happen during times of rapid economic growth. It is essentially when the value of a nation's currency falls, and there may have been a lot of money printed. Inflation increases interest rates, which is an advantage to savers and those who own assets such as stocked commodities or properties. However, it is a loss to banks, as they will be the one to have to pay a large amount of interest. There is a form of inflation that is very high and accelerating. It is called hyperinflation. The worst case of hyperinflation had an increased percentage of 4.19 quadrillion, having the prices double every 15 hours. There are two main causes of inflation.
Demand pull inflation. Demand pull inflation is the upward pressure on prices that follows a shortage in supply, a condition that economists describe as too many dollars chasing too few goods. When demand surpasses supply, higher prices are the result. This is demand pull inflation. A low unemployment rate is unquestionably good in general, but it can cause inflation because more people have more disposable income. Increased government spending is good for the economy too, but it can lead to scarcity in some goods and inflation will follow. There are 5 causes for demand pull inflation. First one is a growing economy. When consumers feel confident, they spend more and take on more debt. This leads to a steady increase in demand, which means higher prices. The second one is increasing export demand. A sudden rise in exports forces an undervaluation of the currencies involved. Next one is government spending. When the government spends more freely, prices go up. Next, inflation expectations. Companies may increase their prices in expectation of inflation in the near future. Last one is more money in the system. An expansion of the money supply with too few goods to buy makes prices increase.
The next cause of inflation is the cost push inflation. Contrary to demand pull inflation, cost push inflation arises from the supply and production side of the economy. It is sparked by the price increases on goods due to the increases in costs of production, such as raw materials and labors. An increase in prices of raw materials may occur due to the limited resources used to produce certain goods. For example, the price of wheat suddenly rises and companies who use wheat to produce bread, such as Gardenia, might have to increase the prices of their goods as well. A rise in wages cost due to shortages of labor when an economy is performing well will also contribute into the increase of cost of production. This all comes to the reason why producers have to produce at a much lower output than usual with higher output price. As a result, consumers have to pay for a higher price of finished goods and spend more on their consumption than they normally do.
Real income. Is your income keeping pace with rising prices? There are 3 possible group responses, which are higher group income, middle group income, and also lower group income. Firstly, higher group income. Higher group income is when your income is rising faster than inflation, then you are staying ahead of rising prices and your living standard rises. Secondly, middle income group. Middle income group is when your income rises as fast as prices, then you are either gaining or losing. Your living standard stays the same. Lastly, lower income group. Lower income group is when your income rises more slowly than prices, then your income is not keeping up with inflation and your living standards will fall. When your nominal income the actual current amount is adjusted for any price changes that occur, you get your real income. This means your real income is your nominal income divided by the CPI times 100. The CPI reflects what's happened to overall consumer prices. Malaysia right now are under MCO, Movement Control Order, due to pandemic COVID-19. And because of that, Malaysia inflation rose 4.7% year-on-year in April 2021 as measured by the Consumer Price Index CPI. Higher income group doesn't affect it due to they still can have whatever their wants and whatever their needs. Middle income group, they can or maybe can't have whatever their needs and whatever their wants. For lower income group, they are the most affected group by the inflation due to they can't really have whatever their needs and whatever their wants.
Next is purchasing power. We can say that it's the amount of goods and services that an individual can buy with his available income during a specific period of time. This concept expresses the ability of individuals to consume and meet their needs and predicts their standards of living and well-being. The purchasing power of any individual is linked to two main determinants. First is the level of income available to the individual. Second is the general level of prices. Purchasing power mainly affects the economy of countries, as it is related to an inverse relationship with the rate of inflation, as the purchasing value of currencies and financial saving decreases with the increase in the rate of inflation, which means a decrease in the value of the amount through which an individual can purchase goods and services. And in general, individuals prefer to spend money on maintaining it, as the spending process aims to raise their country's GDP rate. And it should be noted that the term hyperinflation shows the extent of the sharp decline in purchasing power, which poses a threat to economic growth. For example, Saudi Minister of Investment Khalid Al-Falih stated that the decision of contract government agencies with international companies that have regional headquarters in the kingdom will improve the investment environment and contribute to the development of the work of international companies. In addition to the kingdom's membership in the Group of 20, the size of the Saudi economy and its purchasing power, which represents between 40% to 80% of the revenue of foreign companies. Pointing out that 24 international companies announced that transfer of their headquarters to Riyadh as a first step in this direction.
So how to deal with inflation? Inflation is generally controlled by the central bank and the government. The main policy used is monetary policy, which is changing interest rates. However, in theory, there are a variety of tools or ways to control inflation. First of all is wages controls. In theory, it can help to reduce inflationary prices. However, apart from the 1970s, it has been rarely used. Next is supply-side policies. These policies is used to increase the competitiveness and efficiency of the economy. Also can putting downward pressure on long-term costs. And the last one is control of money supply. Monetarists argue there is a close link between the money supply and inflation. Therefore, controlling money supply can control inflation.